2 Kings chapter 7, verses 1 through 11. This is the famous story of the four lepers outside the city of Samaria bringing the good news when they are under siege from the Arameans. And to explain, to understand verses 1 through 11, because this is the middle of the whole story, we should read what comes before. So we should read about 2 Kings chapter 6, verses 24 through 33. So I've made a quick summary of what we see there down here at the bottom. 2 Kings 6, 24 through 33. You have to know that we're in Samaria. The city capital of the northern tribes is named Samaria, and it is currently under siege from the Arameans. Some of your Bibles might call them Syrians, same group of people. Although today's Syrians are broader than just the Arameans, you might see those two used interchangeably in your Bibles. The siege is real bad, really bad. A donkey's head, which is not exactly the most desirable cut of meat, sells for 80 shekels of silver. Remember that a slave was somewhere between 20 to 30 shekels of silver. So 80 shekels of silver for a donkey's head is crazy. 2 ounces, roughly, of seeds, and there's nothing growing in the city. So the only seeds they get are from birds that would have gone outside of the city, eaten something, brought it back, and then let it go. So 2 ounces of seeds from bird's dung is 5 shekels. Things are terrible in the city of Samaria. People are resorting to cannibalism. There are 2 mothers here in this particular story where one of the moms the moms make a deal. They say, we'll eat my kid today, we'll eat your kid tomorrow. They eat the first woman's child. The other woman hides her kid. The first woman comes to the king and basically asks for him to do something about it. And the king is so distraught at this news that he's just like, I'm going to go kill Elisha. And it's not because the king had anything necessarily against Elisha. In fact, if you go read through 2 Kings, you could start in chapter 3. You'll see that the king of the north at this time, Joram, or Jehoram, they interact quite a bit. They know each other quite well. So I don't think he's trying to kill Elisha because he hates Elisha, but more of a, what are we going to do here? God's not helping us. We've got a prophet of the Lord here. He's not doing anything. I don't know what else to do. I'm just going to go kill Elisha. I got nothing else to do. I can't win. I'm just going to chop this guy's head off. He does this out of weakness and frustration. Maybe to you that sounds crazy, but you've never been under siege. You've never had a mom come tell you some story like this before. It is a really, really, really bad situation inside the city of Samaria. Siege is one of those things that we just really can't get our heads around. I'm going to go back up to our text now for today, and we will jump in here at the beginning. So the king has just arrived. Elisha is in the company of the elders, and the king is like, I'm going to chop this guy's head off. And Elisha now speaks to the king. He says, hear the word of the Lord. And so what that first means is that we have a direct word from Yahweh to the king. This is what the Lord says. About this time tomorrow, so in 24 hours, a seah, which is roughly 10 to 12 pounds, somewhere in there, 10 to 12 pounds of the finest flour, the good stuff, that top tier of flour, will sell for a shekel, and 2 seahs of barley for a shekel at the gate of Samaria. Remember that it was 5 shekels for seeds from bird droppings. And now a shekel will get you 10 to 12 pounds of the finest flour you can imagine. And this will be sold at the gate of Samaria, which means that peace will be here. Not only will there be peace, but there will also be plenty. Food, peace, and abundance. This is a good price for food. So we'll come right here. We'll start at verse 1, and we'll just write in here. Elisha tells the king, deliverance will come tomorrow. And that's going to be in the form of peace and food. So that's verse 1. Verse 2. The officer on whose arm the king was leaning said to the man of God, look, even if the Lord should open the floodgates of heaven, could this happen? So the officer on whose arm the king was leaning, we're not sure if this is some sort of an expression or literal description. If literal, it would mean the king is aged. It would mean the king is weak from this famine. If it's an expression, then this is an officer who provides counsel to the king. Doesn't really matter which one this means. But this officer is somewhat important to the king, it would appear. And he gives his opinion. He says, even if, right? Let me do that one in blue. Even if this were to happen, even if the Lord should open the floodgates of the heavens, floodgates here is literally windows, the windows of the heaven. But the idea is the same. The idea is that even if heaven were to open up and just pour out blessing upon Samaria, could this happen? Could even God bring about the result where a shekel will get you the best flour, two seahs of the best barley, that peace will be here. So what we have here in verse 2 is the officer does not believe Yahweh can do this. He doesn't think God is capable of bringing this about, even if the floodgates of heaven could open. This thing that you're prophesying, Elisha, it's impossible for it to happen. Elisha's response is, you will see it with your own eyes, but you will not eat any of it, right? This is the punishment for his unbelief. You won't eat any of it. So we get a second prophecy just for this guy. So we'll call that verse 2a. This is verse 2b. Elisha says the officer will see, but not have. Okay. Verse 3. Now, we get some new characters. And leprosy has already been kind of a theme of Elisha's ministry. Naaman, the general, had come over and sought help from Elisha. And we see now more lepers step into the story. There were 4 men with leprosy at the entrance of the city gate. So these are men with leprosy, and they can't go into the city because of their leprosy. So they're just kind of hanging out around the city gate. They said to each other, why stay here until we die? So meaning if we just stay here at the city gate, it's not like we can grow food. It's not like there is food for us to eat. We're just going to die here. Okay. And if we go into the city, if we say, well, let's just sneak into the city, the famine is there and we will die. If we stay here, we will die. If we go into the city, we will die. If we stay here, we will die. Same idea, right? So here's their bright idea. So let's go over to the camp of Arameans and surrender. Why? Because if they spare us, we live. And if they kill us, then we die, right? So in their minds, they have 1, 2, 3 paths. Stay, city, Arameans. And for the Arameans, this is surrender. Okay? So they're like, if we stay, there is only the chance of death. If we go into the city, there is only a chance of death. The only option that has death and life, like a sliver of chance of life, is that we go to the Aramean camp. We surrender to them. Oh, whoops, sorry, I did not mean to cross that out. We go to the Aramean camp and we surrender to them, and they very well may kill us. That is absolutely possible. But they might spare us. They might give us some food. We might be able to survive this thing. And so we have these kind of these 4 lepers who just, okay, I guess the best thing for us to do in this situation is to go surrender. Hop over here to our chart. We'll go verses 3 through 4. 4 lepers see surrender as their only hope of life. And it is at this point, at the risk of over-spiritualizing, that we can begin to draw some parallels to the gospel, which are really important for this story here in 2 Kings. Why does someone decide to become a follower of God? There are many reasons. We would love it if everybody became a follower of God because they loved God and they wanted to have a right relationship with Him. And God, I just want to know you and be known by you. That could be pretty great. But the reality is that most people are going to come to God not because they love Him so much, but because they're surrendering to God because they see every path in life as death, and going to God is the only hope of life. God could still kill them. Like, they know they're sinners, and they know that God judges sinners, but they're like, hey, maybe, just maybe, God will be merciful. This is very much like the prodigal son. The prodigal's son. He does not go back to his father's house because he thinks his father loves him. He's just hoping to get a job there. He's just hoping his dad will hire him as a servant. He's not even hoping to be welcomed as a son. But that small hope of life is what gets the prodigal son to go home. And in this situation, we are not saying that the Arameans are God, but we are saying that the 4 lepers are surrendering with the small sliver of the hope of life. And just want to acknowledge that this is how many people find God, surrendering to Him with a small sliver of hope. All right, verse 5. At dusk, they got up and went to the camp of the Arameans. So as the sun's setting, they go to the camp of the Arameans. When they reached the edge of camp, no one was there. No guards. That's strange, right? Why? For the Lord had caused the army of the Arameans to hear the sound of chariots and horses and a great army. Chariots, horses, and a great army. And you're wondering, okay, like, how much of a sound would the Arameans have to hear to get scared? So that they said to one another, look, the king of Israel, so the king of Samaria, is Samaria capital city of the north? North was called Israel, has hired the Hittite and Egyptian kings. And these are the 2 other really large people groups of the time, the Hittites and the Egyptians, to attack us. So they got up, fled in the dusk, abandoned their tents and their horses and donkeys. They left the camp as it was and ran for their lives. How could God deliver Israel from this terrible, terrible situation? With simply sound. God makes the sound. God brings about the sound. God causes the sound, however you want to look at it, so that the Arameans hear what they think is the sound of chariots, horses, and a great army. When you are sieging a city, you are not set up to defend yourself on all sides. You're set up to keep the enemy inside the city. And so getting surprised attacked by chariots and horses and a large army, you're going to get absolutely destroyed. And so the Arameans flee. They think that the Hittites and the Egyptians, not just one, but 2 nations must be here. That's how great the sound is. And so they get up and they fled in the middle of the night. They abandoned their tents, or not in the middle of the night, but in the fleeting of the day. They abandoned their tents and their horses and their donkeys. Remember, at dusk, these guys go, and so at dusk they abandoned, meaning, I mean, as soon as they started walking to camp, the Arameans started to flee. it's just kind of comical. The four lepers heading to camp, and what they hear is massive armies. And in reality, it's just four lepers showing up. Kind of a hilarious way to save the people of the city of Samaria. So we get to this next one, verses 5 through 7. The Arameans flee at the sound of great armies, which is really God bringing about this sound. And and at the same time, the lepers find camp empty. So what will the lepers do now that camp is empty? They do what you would think anyone would do in this scenario. They've been starving to death. The men who had leprosy reached the edge of camp, entered one of the tents, and ate and drank. I have no idea what it's like to live in famine. In America, we don't really have to deal with this. I'm not denying that there are hungry people in our country. There are. But famine in a siege is something that none of us understand. And they do. These people, they lived it. And here they are, and there's more food than they can eat. There's more drink than they can drink. And so they do what anybody would do in this situation. They feasted. And after they feasted, the armies have silver and gold, everything that they've been pillaging and plundering for all their years. So they grab some silver, they grab some gold, they grab some clothes, and they bury it. They went off and they hid him. I don't know if they buried it, but that's the idea. And you can kind of picture these four guys, a cup of wine in one hand, a chicken drum on the other hand, gold, silver clothes in their backpacks, going off to hide them, laughing. They bury it all, and then they look at each other. They returned and entered another tent, took some things from it, and hid them also. They're like, yeah, this is great. Let's get some more. Let's just keep amassing possessions here, right? So this is the next part of this story, verse 8 here. Verse 8. After feasting, they take gold, silver, clothes, hide them, and go for more. And the very activity that they're engaged in, at some point, they look at each other. They look at what they're doing. Perhaps their minds maybe go back to Samaria. They think of all of those people, maybe this very moment, who are starving to death. Then they said to each other, what we're doing is not right. This is a day of good news. It's a day of good news, Good news, the gospel. The gospel ties here are so clear. Oh, yeah, back up to the above one. What's the gospel tie for verses 5 through 7? That God saves in ways we can't imagine, right? Like sending his son to die for sin. But back to verse 9. What we're doing is not right. This is a day of good news, right? What's the good news? That salvation is here, that we don't have to die. That though we're starving to death, there is food and there is drink. This is a day of good news. And here's the travesty. On a day of good news, when people need this good news to live, if you keep it to yourselves, this is wrong. This is not right. To hold on to the good news and keep it to yourself is not right. If we wait until daylight, punishment will overtake us. Meaning, if we spend this night just pillaging and pillaging and pillaging this camp, we are all jacked up. We can't wait till morning. Even though it's dusk, we can't wait till morning. We need to go right this moment, here in the night, and report this to the royal palace. We need to go right now. And I believe that this is the high point of the story. They recognize that holding on to the good news is wrong and decide to share it immediately. Verse 10, so they went and called out to the city gatekeepers and told them, we went into the Aramean camp, and no one was there, not a sound of anyone, only tethered horses and donkeys, and the tents left just as they were. The gatekeepers shouted the news, and it was reported within the palace. So that's kind of our following action here, verses 10 through 11. The news is given to the guards and king. In the verses that follow, which would be verses 12 through 20, everything that the prophet Elisha said would happen comes to pass. First, the king sends out two guys to go verify the news. They go verify the news, and then he goes and tells the city, go to the Aramean camp, go get food, go get gold, go get whatever you need. And the city descends on the Aramean camp. The guy, the officer, who didn't believe that Yahweh could do this, he gets trampled at the city gate and he dies. So he sees it, but he doesn't get to partake of it. And everything that God said would happen absolutely takes place. So lots of lessons for us in this. First and foremost, if God says it's going to happen, it will happen. God's promises are sure. That's one lesson. What's another lesson? He saves when we hit rock bottom. God will often let us experience just incredible loss to get us to that point where we're totally at the end of ourselves. And that's when he'll so often move and save us. But the big one for us, when we're just looking at verses 1 through 11, is that the good news must be shared. The gospel parallels to this are fantastic. We are lepers who have stumbled into a camp filled with food and drink and delights that satisfy the soul. We were surrendering to a God with the hope that he would be merciful to us. And we didn't just receive mercy, we received life in abundance. So we can't just sit here learning more, enjoying more and more of our salvation and never sharing it with anyone. That is wrong. The right thing to do is to go back to that city of Samaria, this world filled with starving people, and share with them the good news that God satisfies and that there is life in him. The good news must be shared. So maybe we're over spiritualizing 2 Kings 7, 1 through 11, but I really don't think so. It's a beautiful passage that reminds us that if this good news is worth sharing, then how much more for what we have today.